April 21st, 2026. Well, we're kind of coming down to the end of the 2 week ceasefire, and the negotiations are, I guess, going to resume momentarily here, or will be in by the time, well, should be in way, I guess, about the time that you get to see this for the first time for the earliest viewers. Um, and of course, the same team led by Vice President Vance is heading to Islamabad, I guess, to and negotiate potentially with the Iranians. As of this recording, we don't know if the Iranians are really going to show or not show. And of course, the question is, what exactly will be the outcome here? I mean, apparently it's developed that there's kind of a split between the some of the more political civilian people in Iran and the hardcore IRGC surviving people. And much like I projected in my pre-war video on the edge of war, I really thought that you'd find that by killing off all the senior people, you'd end up with more radical people emerging from the ranks, from the trenches, to take over leadership positions, and like the IRGC, who might become a real problem. In a lot of ways, I think that in anything short of an absolute total war, killing off the enemy's top leadership is probably a mistake, because often you'll end up with something worse. I mean, and I think that can be an example of what that's not saying good about them, but I mean, at least we had some restraint, I think, on the previous leadership, and we don't know right now. We have a split. There are people, I think, that are prepared to make some kind of a deal, although we don't know how far they're willing to go. The problem we have at this point is that the U.S. demand for the surrender of the uranium hexafluoride gas that is buried apparently under these nuclear sites that we bombed last year. First of all, you have the logistical problem of getting that out, which could be done, but it isn't something they can just do instantly. And of course, as a matter of pride and principle, they don't want to give it up. And they may actually hope to turn it into 10 bombs one of these days. So that becomes a real dilemma for us. I mean, failure to get this will have the problem that the Democrats will, of course, be yelling that the whole operation was a failure. And so that's what pushes the thing forward. Of course, the Democrats are hoping that it's a failure. They are the modern day analogy to Benedict Arnold, and and they really want us to fail. That's a different thing from saying maybe this whole enterprise wasn't the best idea in the first place. But once you're committed to it, it's a whole different issue what the implications of a U.S. failure are. And a future Democrat president, if there is one, I hope there isn't, but there will be probably, is going to have to deal with the consequence of that. That is, if they induce a failure here, there'll be long-term economic implications and geopolitical implications of that failure. If there's a success, on the other hand, we might, come through this okay. Of course, we'll have to wait and see, what would be the, next development. And so we'll see whether the Iranians show or not, and that will have a lot. If the Iranians don't show, does that mean the ceasefire promise of 2 weeks is over? So that means the bombing begins immediately, I assume. Well, we'll see. If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, or you can follow me also on Rumble. I post there. Yeah, so I don't know. The other possibility would be, it's hard for me to believe that they're really going to just at this point completely capitulate to our demands. We'll see. I hope they do, but we're dealing with a fairly radical regime, and remember that we have a pretty bad situation fundamentally. One option would be to try to just continue the ceasefire and then continue the blockade. Now that has the problem of dragging this whole story out, for time. And of course, we want to get this over with so we can get on to domestic issues in order to campaign for the fall election. And of course, that is, what the real objective here. But of course, this has been dragging on and dragging on, and On the other hand, we could go ahead and launch the planned attack to knock out the electrical infrastructure of Iran, which I think we have the ability to do that. Apparently, we've actually strengthened the air power in the area since this ceasefires occurred, and probably have brought a lot of aircraft back up to OR conditions and so forth, and and such that kind of thing. So you know, after so that it probably wouldn't take a whole lot, maybe a week or so, to accomplish that mission. I don't know about blowing up every bridge. I mean, little, maybe certain big bridges that are critical. But the result of that is, you would have Iran without any real electric power, essentially accomplishing on Iran what Russia's been trying to do on Ukraine, but has had moderate success. But doing it with drones with lower yield explosive warheads, maybe of 100 pounds, and dropping guided 2,000-pound bombs from F-35s, for instance, it's a whole different issue on the level of destruction and the effectiveness. So I think you can do that. The problem is, what do you have after that? You may still have a rather radical Iranian regime with a more and more suffering population, that still doesn't give up, that simply still continues to, use small boats and what residual weapons they have stored somewhere to fire at tankers and keep the Strait of Hormuz closed for a considerable period of time, and effectively having large economic impacts, which ultimately, of course, may lead to a partial regime change in the United States that is bringing the Democrats in. And of course, that is not exactly a victory, I don't think. I don't know that if, a Democrat majority in the Senate, for instance, and Iran totally destroyed isn't exactly a good trade-off, in my opinion. But nonetheless, that may be where we're heading, because if they don't come up with a reasonable agreement, and then the other problem is that the people that are negotiating apparently are a little bit more flexible than Trump himself is. As I understand, after the last negotiation, Trump himself disagreed with some of the positions that, of course, some of the people in the negotiating team, I don't know, Vance maybe, was considering offering, or maybe some of the other people. And of course, that didn't suit well with him. Of course, so anyhow, that's kind of the way that is. One approach to this whole subject that would be interesting, if you're going to go ahead with the attack, I would suggest would be something like the following. You do an analysis of their electrical power system, probably exclude those sites that contribute the lowest 20% to the total Iranian power grid. And unless they are directly connected to a specific military site, like directly supporting it, those you just leave those others off. And then you begin with a group that's 20% to 40%, and then systematically destroy those in the early days of the raiding. Meanwhile, at the same time, there's non-destructive techniques that can be used to kind of knock the things off the line. So go ahead and knock the rest of the stuff, particularly the high-end the 20% that contribute the bulk of the power, knock them offline temporarily with those techniques to give them a taste of what the ultimate outcome would look like, and then see if they're more agreeable. Because in a lot of ways, we really would rather have them agreeing with us and be functional than have them dysfunctional and not agreeing with us. I mean, if Iran can't deliver oil, the consequence will be bad for the thing, because for one thing, I suspect that will strengthen the relationship between Russia and China, with Russia having more power now. Because where else do they get oil from if they can't get it from Venezuela? They can't get it from Iran. Maybe if the Persian Gulf is, well, a lot of the commitments there is going to be more to the Europe and the Western world from the Arab countries, right? So probably rather than to China, we hope. Well, unless they have to pay in yuan in order to get the Iranians not to sabotage the tankers. But we're looking for an outcome that's favorable to us, not one that's unfavorable. So ultimately, getting Iran probably back online is favorable to the U.S. position. Otherwise, pipelines and railroad trains from Russia for oil would be China's real alternative, because I don't think we have enough surplus to provide them to them, really. I mean, yeah, we pretty much use about the amount we produce, but the thing is maybe a little surplus. But most of what we export is made up for with stuff we import, i.e., from Canada and Mexico, and probably now Venezuela after the regime change there. So, I mean, you can see how that kind of doesn't give us a lot to export to China, and China would probably be more reliable, would probably rather rely more on Russia to the degree they could. Now, there's issues about grades of oil and all that, which may have another factor. So, anyway, that's kind of what I think might be an interesting way to approach before we push it to the final conclusion. Or the alternative would be to see if we could just extend the ceasefire, keep the blockade in place, and see if eventually China starts working, trying to pressure Iran to make a deal. Because I think ultimately China really would like to have the deal also. I mean, that's my guess. So we'll just have to see what happens. That's kind of the way I see this, and we'll have to, well, in the next few days, probably well before my normal run of a video posting is over, probably we will have some kind of have an idea of which way it's going. But because I think, anyway, that's kind of my general spin on the thing today, and we'll see what else happens. Let's see, and what else is cooking? Well, one other thing is this disgraceful event with a couple of people from the Israeli military destroying a crucifix statue in Lebanon. And of course, I think we need to put a lot of pressure on the Israelis to put those soldiers on trial. I mean, they need to go to prison for this, frankly. And I think it'd be a good idea to, even if it's an unjust punishment, we need to push that pretty hard because, well, I mean, unjust in the sense of not within the normal Israeli legal process. Those guys need to be made an example of because they need to understand that, first of all, Christians are the biggest supporters of Israel anyhow. I would say that particularly fundamentalist Christians probably support Israel better than probably a lot of the Jews in the United States do, actually. And the second thing is that Christians in Lebanon are would be allies against Hezbollah. What were those idiots thinking? So they need to be given a taste of justice here as an example to everybody else. Don't do stuff like this. So that's my comment on that. It doesn't change my overall policy for Israel. I think this is just an action of a few stray individuals with warped minds. We always have those kind of people in every society, and they need to be smacked down. So anyway, and that's my thought on that. What else? I think that's about it for this time. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. And so I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always. And the address of my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for this time.